Thank you. Sorry. Thought I was empty. No, I want to get this done with. Then I'm going to want that sedative. I could smell something from inside that building. Very faintly. I figured that would count as a probable cause. Not that I needed it as a civilian. But you never forget the way a corpse smell. They were bad enough they had the same smell. I hadn't forgotten how to pick a lock, so I let myself inside. You know, I really do wish they had been corpses. I really do wish he had been a serial killer. I really do. Do you believe me? Please say you believe me. I do. Can you describe the interior of the building? I'm trying to focus through this. I really am. I'm sorry. It's just that I'd like to go to sleep after this for a very long time. Is there a paramedic here? Is the sedative ready? Thank God. The interior had a hallway with 6 rooms. The construction was old, but visibly newer than the rest of the building. The walls between each room had been soundproofed. There were no windows to the outside or doorways between the rooms themselves. The only access was through the hallway. I tried to make Miss Baymer leave at that point. The smell was stronger inside. The rooms contained presses. Hydraulic presses. 4-foot by 8-foot custom presses. I couldn't figure out what they were at first, because they were hovering over what looked like hospital beds. There were IV bags in each room, as well as other medical equipment. That's how we kept them alive for so long, of course. I think I might be seeing black spots. Do you need to take a break? The idea of having to start this is worse than the idea of finishing it. Then please describe your next course of action. The building was obviously an active crime scene. I had no doubt at this point. I was in a layer of what I believed to be a serial killer. I tried to tell Miss Baymer to leave several times. She refused on the grounds that it would not be right to leave me on my own. There wasn't much time to make an issue out of it. My opinion of her was that she was a bit nosy, but basically alright, and I didn't think she'd be a liability if she stayed out of my way. I had to make a judgment call as to whether or not I should proceed on my own, in case the family was somehow, impossibly, still alive, and perhaps in danger, or if I should leave and call for backup. I had told my wife where I was going previously, so I knew my absence would be noted and reported if the worst happened. Neither of us could get cell phone reception. Sorry, I'm rambling. It was then that I heard not even a gasp. It was like a gasp, but not really. I don't want to describe it any more than that. There was a sound. It drew my attention further on. I had to act. That's all that matters. There were some stairs at the very far end of the warehouse, descending into a basement. I told Miss Baymer to remain behind and pulled my service revolver. I had a flashlight on my person as well, and turned it on as I descended into the basement. The basement had been hand-dug, maybe even over the course of the entire 20-year disappearance. I don't know. The floor was dirt. There was a tunnel that retreated back far enough that it had to be supported with struts at regular intervals. when my flashlight first illuminated the stack. I wish they'd been dead. I wish he'd been a serial killer. Please take a moment. After I recovered, my first thought was, thank God, they're all dead. How am I supposed to go on with my life after this? I am 64 years old, for Christ's sake. I am not a young man who can forget things anymore. When you're young, you have to make the sense that you're invincible, that you're never going to die. I don't have that to protect me anymore. Look at me whining. And they had that done to them. It's my fault. I should have found them, saved them, somehow. I'm sorry, Hob. I've got to ask. Can you describe the scene? Yeah. I can. I didn't know what I was looking at first. Hell, I still don't. It was a stack. Maybe 2 feet thick. From the stink and colouring, it was obviously made out of flesh. Thought maybe he'd hack them up, stack them up into pieces. That would have been bad enough. The first thing that alerted me to the truth was the eyeball. On the top of the stack was a perfectly round eyeball in the middle of the socket that had been distorted to the size of a saucer. That's when I realized what I was looking at was 20 goddamn years of torture, basically. He had the entire Discroll family under those presses for 20 years, keeping them alive on an IV drip, increasing the pressure on them very slowly so that their bodies had time to adapt, until they'd been flattened like pancakes. He squished them by about a 1/4 inch every year for 20 years. Then he'd pull them out when they were too broken and too wretched to move, without any chance of recovering, and stack them on top of each other. I've got no idea what for. I don't want to know. And I was thinking, thank God, they're all dead, when the one at the top started gasping again. What did they say? Nothing at first. He couldn't speak without help. I think it would have been Avery Discroll. Not that I could tell much about the gender or the age, but the hair was blonde where there was hair. The head was a mess of scars. I think the son of a bitch who did this must have removed parts of the skull. I've got no idea how he got their heads so flat otherwise. Not as flat as the rest of their bodies, but who the hell knows how their brains handled that? Their lips were punctured by teeth everywhere, after the presses had flattened out their noses, I guess. Avery was 14 when he disappeared. I stopped shaking. Goddamn. Weird the way our body work, isn't it? What else? There was a machine. A sort of pump. I followed a hose with my flashlight and realized everyone in the stack was hooked up to the pump. I don't think they could breathe on their own, you see. Not after a while. Simply wasn't enough volume for their lungs to inflate. There was some sort of opening cut right into each of their chests. There was a switch on the pump. I don't know why I pressed it. I was in a panic. I wanted to do something. Maybe some stupid part of me thought that if I switched it on, they would inflate and be okay. I switched it. It increased the volume of air to the topmost voice. I could hear the pump working harder. Which is when Avery Discroll started to scream. He begged me to kill him. He said other things too. He didn't make much sense. He was in pain. I would have hoped he'd gone insane over several years previously. Oh my God. My thoughts exactly. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't stop screaming. I believe he was convinced I was his torturer. A closer look at his eye revealed that it was mostly a mess of white scar tissue. He was as blind as a bat. I spoke with some burn victims once. They told me that they managed to find meaning and purpose again after a while. I don't know how anyone in the Discroll family could have done that. I stated my name. I told him I was a detective. I told him I was here to help. I repeated it over and over again, knowing of course that there was nothing that anyone, anywhere, could do to help. Miss Bamer arrived, drawn by the sound. Before she saw the stack, she told me that I had screamed and she had come to help, but I do not remember having done so. Nevertheless, she arrived. Then she saw the stack and screamed, but I was intent on Avery Discroll. He was able to hear. He became lucid for a few moments. It was a strain to understand what he said, but I'll never be able to forget it. Please kill me. It hurts. I don't want to be a monster. Please kill me and tell my family that I died a long time ago. I don't know if they are looking for me. Don't let them know what happened to me. Please kill me. He could still cry, and he did, although his tear ducts were too deformed for it to be noticeable. I should have forced Miss Bamer to leave. That is the only action in the matter which I regret more than failing to solve that case 20 years ago. Not just for her own sake, but for what I did next. I don't think she could have wounded them any more deeply if she'd try. She took away the last comfort any of them in that stack had. You see, they had not been able to speak to one another for 20 years. She said, "That's all of them, isn't it? That's the entire Discroll family. They're all alive, in there. The whole family." For 20 years, each member of the Discroll family had been unaware their fellow inmates were the other members of the family. They had all been holding out their hopes that their family was okay. All been dreaming someone out there loved them and was free from suffering. Do you know what the screams of 6 people tortured over 2 decades, smashed down to a width of 4 inches sound like when they're all stacked on top of one another? It sounds like the gates of hell swinging open. I think that's enough, Detective Milgate. Not yet. I shot them. Mercy is hard, but I owed it to them. I am the one who failed to save them. It only took me 1 bullet to go all the way through. I emptied my revolver though, to make sure they didn't linger, to give them that final piece. It was the only kindness I had to give them. We left and called for backup after that. Neither Miss Bamer nor I wished to remain with the bodies. I elected not to follow the crime scene investigators back into the basement. I asked if I could make my statement and leave. And after one of them saw what I had seen, they agreed. May I have my sedative now? Yes, of course. Thank you. Please show in the paramedic. Unroll up my sleeve. My wife has diabetes, so I'm well aware of the routine. Oh, and please make sure you have the same courtesy available for Miss Bamer. She seemed to have it worse than me, after. Poor woman couldn't even throw up or cry. Of course. Do you know where she is now? She told the lead crime scene she was going home, but we haven't been able to reach her. Did you try the paper? Which paper? The Daily World. Are you sure? There is no Stacey Bamer on the staff with the Daily World.